Yeah, I'm Vince. I'm your new president for ACM. We'll be hosting this whole shebang. And yeah, without further ado, welcome. We have some links here to sign in, but we're in the process of transitioning our website. So none of those links are working right now. So just say hi in chat. That's what that's all we got for that slide. Our first GM is going to be about tech ethics. And so we're all here to learn about why should we even care about technology ethics, or what are the ethics that come with being a computer science major, and all the responsibilities that come with that. And without further ado, we have our presenter here, Professor Neftali.
Where do they want me to see?
You sit on the left side. All right. Oh no, this is the left side. All right, the other side. No, you're good. That's
Which left?
My left.
Sure. Okay. I'm probably going to say left, so I go left. All right. You wanna come and sit with me, or?
Press the button.
Oh, you gotta press the button. All right. All right. All right. Someone else could sit here with me, but I want this to be a conversation, not only with you, but also those of you who are here. But having someone here makes it clear to those who are watching that this is a conversation, right? So you get to meet me in my formal setting, which is in a classroom. You can meet me there every day. But this is the informal me, and we're trying to create connection. We're trying to create a discussion here. First of all, I want to ask, who of you have taken CS100 already? Okay, leave your hand up if you took it with me. Okay, good. So I'm gonna start first by talking about the background of the ethics talk in CS100, because that helps frame everything that we're going to talk about right now. Now, it's up to you where the conversation leads us. I have some slides there to start conversations, but it can go anywhere. Who's going to tell me when I have to stop?
To stop?
Yeah, who has control of the clock? I mean, we have to stop eventually.
We'll stop.
It's Thursday, so it's critical role night. I need to get home with time for that. So, okay. You tell me when to stop. But anyway, let's start talking. Okay, so for those of you who have taken CS100, especially those of you who took it with me, some of those images might look familiar, right? So we have the great Dr. Ian Malcolm there, who kind of introduces the whole topic of ethics in computer science and ethics in science in general. Right, and there's this scene in Jurassic Park where he's talking about doing things just because you could, and then packaging them and selling them. And that's pretty much the idea that we've had in computer science, or that's pretty much how tech has been driven for the last decades, ever since the birth of computer science, at the end of the first half of the last century. That's some convoluted way to say 1940s. But anyways, we pretty much do things because we can, right? And we didn't realize about how much stuff we could do. We still don't know how much we can do, but now we're starting to pause a little bit and starting to ask ourselves, should we do it, right? So there's a lot of things that we are able to do now that we were not able to do back then. And back then, I mean, for those of you, I talk a lot about movies, but this movie is based on real events, right? For example, the movie Hidden Figures, and the story that Hidden Figures talks about, right? Like back then, they were really pushing technology to its limits because you had to. That's the only way you could achieve what they were trying to achieve. So again, the question of should we do this really wasn't in their minds, in the sense of is this ethical, or is this going to impact everybody? We have to do it, right? But now we get to ask, should we do it? And I wanted to, the reason I added those images there to recall that talk from CS100. When I arrived to UCR, And I've always had tried to keep an ethics component as part of my courses because I think it is important, right? It is important to think about what you do, who is going to be impacted with that. And for example, with doctors, like malpractice in medicine, being no, right? You're gonna kill people. Civil engineering, the same. Malpractice in civil engineering, a bridge might fall, gonna kill a lot of people. But with computer science, the results of malpractice in computer science are not immediately noticed, but they can even be even more impactful, right? Because now computer science is in everything. So that's why I always had that ethics component. And when I came here, CS100 already had ethics component, and it is part of the description of the course. But originally, and I don't know if there are anyone here, is anyone here who took CS100 before I came to UCI this last summer? You did. How was ethics done back then?
Do you remember Jeffrey McDaniel? Like, okay, so Jeffrey McDaniel was my professor, and he just went over it really quickly. Like, yeah, you got computers can do X, Y, Z, and that's it.
Well, without throwing shade at our professors, what type of assignments did you do for it? You had assignments, right? What type of assignments did you do?
We just built a shell.
Okay. Okay. So yes.
So I took it with Professor Reed, and we wrote like occasional papers on ethics. Like we researched a topic, a specific topic within computer ethics or tech ethics, and we were to write a report.
So that's the state where I came in, and that's probably a later iteration of what you experienced. And so the thing is that with ethics, well, first of all, let me survey the room. What is ethics? What is ethics?
I think for me personally, like ethics is like, it's like a fine line between like ethics and morals kind of thing.
There's overlap between the two of them, yeah.
Definitely, it's like what's right and what's wrong. Maybe that's what morals are personally, but ethics are more universal, as in like what you should and shouldn't do, and how it affects other people.
Okay. Yeah. You have the right idea. So morals is about your internal values and how and your morals are shaped by different elements. They're shaped by belief. They're shaped by the environment you grew up with, your upbringing. But morals are more personal. Ethics are a set of rules that we agree to abide to, and they're mostly shaped by social context. So, but because of that, because they're shaped by social context, it is important for ethics to be discussed. Right, so that's one of the things that we did for CS100, where Professor Reem and I decided to make it more a discussion. And those of you who took it with me or Professor Reem this last year, you saw that happening, where ethics was a discussion. And the point of that discussion was precisely to process and consume the information together as a group, as a society, as a community. That is how ethics are built. It's in a social context. You remove the social context and they're pretty much meaningless. So based on that discussion, you still need to mention it in the lecture. So that's where the talk for ethics in CS100 comes in, which helps us kind of summarize everything that happened during those discussions. So anyways, but here's one thing. A lot of students complain in the feedback that they don't see the value of ethics. Why are we talking about ethics in a class about software construction, right? And I had students reach out to me and tell me that directly to my face. How dare they? I take in all feedback, good and bad. It's all helpful. So, but that's the sad truth of our society. We don't see the value in ethics. We don't see the value because it doesn't have monetary value, right? Although that's arguable, but it doesn't have immediate monetary value. And again, just as with the mindset with computer science, let's do things because we can do those things, right? Because we have the power to do it. Ethics doesn't play to the narrative, right? Ethics don't give you more power. If anything, you're sharing your power with others. Ethics don't give you monetary value. ethics can be costly. They can cost you, following an ethical code can cost you your job, right? So we're not used to think that way as a society, even less so in computer science. Because in computer science, we're not used to seeing our work being impactful to other human beings. But the reality is that after you graduate, you're coming into the world where computer science is very, very powerful. We're talking about computer science, it's about to control our financial system with cryptocurrencies. Computer science pretty much controls our surveillance, our security, both national, regional, personal security. Computer science, it's also about to control our healthcare. Computer science is everywhere. So you are about to go into a world where what you do impacts lives. And we need to go back to that Malcolm's quote. We need to start asking ourselves, I'm going to do this because I can do it or because I should do it, all right? Okay, so that's where the conversation starts. So behind the scenes, just for you to understand a little bit about what inspires CS100, a little bit about me, why I care so much about ethics. For those of you who don't know, I'm originally from Mexico. I'm Mexican, and I come from, I was born and raised in Baja. I came to UCI for my doctorate degree, and then I came to UCR for my position as teaching professor. And why I care about ethics, I didn't have much choice. My dad, all the time there in Baja, my dad he was the minister of a Christian church. My mom was the ethics professor at the school where I studied. Because in Mexico, you are required. Every school should have a section in ethics and I don't know how it's civics, ethics and civics. I don't know if you do here in the U.S., but in Mexico, that's how it is. And you basically learn how to be both a proper human being and a proper citizen of your country. So whenever I went, I was either the pastor's kid or I was the ethics professor's kid. So everybody, I had no wiggle room. Everybody expected me to care about ethics. So my upbringing had, and in my house it was very well, having a moral code and an ethical code was an essential part of my upbringing. So I care about ethics and I care about morals because I was raised that way. But I do recognize that not everybody has the same background. Not everybody was learned to care about morals and to care about ethics from the beginning. And certainly very few at the level that it was imbued into me. But anyways, that's the background. That's why I'm passionate about this topic. So you know a little bit about me. Anyways, enough of me talking. Any questions so far?
One thing that came into my mind like immediately is when you said that ethics come with the social context, and you said that we have to discuss ethics in order to actually create ethics. Do you think that there's like a way to actually build upon ethics without that discussion, or is there a specific foundation that it builds on top of before that discussion is actually sparked? You need to start from a moral code. Actually, if you click, you click, not you. You click. Actually, ethics are shaped. You have to start with morals and then go to ethics. If you don't have a moral code, you can start with an ethical code and then build your moral code or shape your moral code. I keep shaping my moral code all the time. The foundation of it, the fundamentals, they don't change, but some of the, let's say the edge fundamentals, I don't know how to call it, they keep being shaped because we live in a changing world, and you interact with different people every day, and as you get older, you get to experience life from different perspectives. So they keep being shaped, but you need to start from that.
And you need to start from the assumption that we all have a moral code. In fact, there's, we don't have to look for it, but there's a slide where I include the picture of the Joker. The reason why we are fascinated with the Joker is because it's fantasy.
Mhm.
Nobody does evil for the sake of evil.
Yeah, pure chaos.
Yeah, everybody thinks they're good in their own mind. That's one of the problems that we have with bias. Nobody thinks they're biased, because if you think you're biased, you're going to change, right? Nobody thinks they're biased. So that's one of the problems we have with bias. But the same goes with morals, right? Everybody's following their own moral code, and if they're not interacting with human beings, that moral code doesn't get to be shaped by those interactions, right? And you start getting you pretty much go crazy. You pretty much go crazy, because if you think that you're the only, you think that your own opinion is the one that matters, or your opinion is what makes you a good person, you're going to become crazy. The perfect example, the most villainous evil person that you know in history, who is it?
History?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Everybody says Hitler. Everybody says Hitler.
Yeah.
And one of the problems that Hitler had is that he would not allow anyone to counsel him. He would go into a room and he would make important decisions himself, because he didn't believe in anyone but himself. So everything he did in his own mind, he was a good person. There's something dangerous about that. Do you think you're a good person, right? It doesn't mean you're right. It doesn't mean you're right. It doesn't necessarily mean you're right. So everybody does things thinking that they're good, thinking that they're doing what their moral code tells them to do. So in that sense, if you're not letting your morals be shaped by your experiences, by everybody around you, you again end up being going crazy, right? So you need to start from there. You need to start from a moral code that has been tested and has been shaped from those around you and from your context. And then once we have kind of a common understanding of what's good and what's bad, then we set the rules of engagement, and that's where ethics come in. So by definition, you cannot come up with an ethical code by yourself. I would even dare to say it is dangerous to do so. Anyone, if you disagree, you're welcome to do so, and let me know if you have any questions, and if you have a counter argument. I want to hear that. But this is again my opinion, and my opinion is that ethics in a vacuum, they just don't work. They're just not ethics, right?
But definitely, that definitely makes sense. In my mind is like morals is more of like a person sort of thing, but ethics is it's like the thing that everybody should agree upon. And there's compromises for sure.
Yeah.
And I feel like in ethics, there's probably going to be compromises that will take from somebody else's morals and the other person's morals, but they can't really, come to a conclusion or come to like a specific thing that they both agree on. They'll probably be halfway, and then that's where the ethics come.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's 100%.
And one of the reasons I chose the cases that we reviewed is 100. So we look into Snowden, we look into BitTorrent, we look into those cases. They're complex cases, right? And each of those violate the ACM Code of Ethics. They just plainly do. They violate the ACM Code of Ethics. That's why you need to have both. You need to have morals and ethics. Because if you analyze everything from the point of view of ethics, ethics are the rules, but the rules need to be based on morals. But we can argue, like for example, what Snowden did, we can argue that it was unethical, but we can argue that it was moral, right? So you need to have both components. You can have, like for example, that's a perfect example of following a moral code violating an ethical code. But you could have also an ethical code that is not moral. And the example that I include there is called Omerta. Omerta is the origin of the snitches get stitches. it was a code that the mafia had or still has. I'm not part of the mafia, so I don't know. But maybe I am. No. No. It was a code that the mafia had about not talking to the police, right? Not talking to the police, and it was their ethical code because you don't want to hurt your friends, you don't want to hurt your boss, you don't want to hurt your colleagues, right? So it was an ethical code, but we can argue that it was immoral. Right? We can argue that it's immoral. So having an ethical code doesn't mean that you can just get rid of all morals. They have to be together. They have to, in order for them to make sense in our society, they have to be together. This is just my opinion. So if you have contrary, please do tell me. But again, this is not a lecture. I talk a lot. But yeah, I mean that's what I find. But anyways, we can introduce the next topic because this one is probably a sheet. Okay. Here's a question: why do we cheat? Here's a better question. Raise your hand. While being at UCR, without citing a specific example, I don't want you to incriminate yourself. Snitches get stitched. No, so I don't want you to incriminate yourself. But let's not make it as specific as at while being at UCR. But have you ever cheated at school?
Raise your hand too, guys.
Don't leave me here alone. You have. I have cheated at school. I have. I can even tell you about a specific case when I cheated. You know the round robin algorithm, or the philosopher's problem. You're working with multi-threads, and you need to share resources. You go through. You let each resource take a turn. Each thread take a turn of the resources, so that they all end up in their task at about the same time. They cannot end at the same time because again, you have limited resources. So it's a classic problem of multi-threading concurrency, right? I didn't get it the first time it was taught to me. I copied that code. I cheated. I copied that code and I submitted it as my own. I did it, right? Why did I do it? Why do we cheat? Why do we do it?
That's like, I feel like it's like really personal from person to person. Like it's definitely like up in the air. Like every person will say one thing or the other. It's like, oh, I don't like feeling stuck. I just want the points. Like there's so many things that go into that question, but I feel like most people is just they would rather CBA than actually know the material most of the time.
So yes.
I feel like cheating is very situational. Because sometimes you can just do it because like, you don't actually care about what you're learning about.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to get the credit. You don't care what's going on. Then there's some times where it's just kind of like, it is, even if you try to understand what's going on, what algorithm you're reading, you're trying to understand line by line what's going on. Sometimes you really just can't figure it out. And the best solution is to see someone else do it and try to comprehend what they've done and then try to incorporate it.
Difficulty of a problem because either you're not prepared to tackle that problem yet, or because it was badly taught. Difficulty of a problem is the number one reason why people cheat, or it's not number one, reported. So yeah, there's that. Who else? I saw that all. I'm gonna start taking names. No, I saw that all of you raise your hands. So what other opinions? Why did you cheat when you did it? Why the last time you did it? Why did you do it?
I feel like for me, it was just like what I was learning about. Just like it wasn't worth it for me to learn it because I like really didn't care about it. It's just something that wasn't interesting to me. So I just like decided to take the shortcut, just cheat on it.
So you were unmotivated, basically, pretty much.
Exactly.
Okay. No one else? Yes.
I think it's like when you can get away with it, you want to do it again, so you can't get away with it. So you kind of, I'm just saying, like, not for me, but I'm saying.
Good save, good save, good save, good save. Yeah, some people get addicted to cheating. Not me. No, that's true. There's true. There's people who feel a rush from cheating. Yeah. But not you though. Anyone else? Yeah.
This reward analyzed. This reward. So pretty much like, oh, we found a quote unquote old test, and it turns out to be the quote unquote test.
Yeah.
While looking online at unauthorized material.
Yeah. It all comes down to that. You make your risk reward analysis, and in the end, you decide to cheat because it gives you more reward. Whether it gives you the ability to go around something that you don't want to go through, or maybe because it gives you a better grade. Most of the time, except for the addiction one, we'll touch on that one. No, it is important. It is important to touch on that one. But most of the other reasons, they fall under that category where you make the analysis and you say it's better to just cheat than not do it. I say your hand.
Yeah, I see like implicit social pressure, and I can like relate to that somehow because sometimes like you see your peers or you see your other classmates like, and it seems like everyone else seems to understand perfectly what you're doing and like what's being talked about in the lecture. And I think like if you yourself like don't also understand it on the same level as your peers, you sort of feel like this imposter syndrome. And there's like a social pressure where like you also have to be on the same level of understanding with like your peers. And so I think that also drives people to cheat.
That social pressure could come from your parents.
Yeah.
As well. Some of us could be pressured by our parents to do well. And that pressure is just too much. Yeah, no, definitely. In high school, it's cool to cheat. Right? It's cool to do it.
For sure.
Right? It's like, hey, give me your notes. Come on, everybody's doing it. Right? So it's cool to do it. So that's the social pressure right there, right? And in high school, sadly, not throwing shade at our educational system, but sadly, most of the time in high school, they're rare instructors. They're very good instructors in high school. Again, not throwing shade at the position of being a high school instructor. They're very good. They're very good people. They're doing valuable work. But sadly, there's also a lot of people who just don't care. They don't care if you cheat. So in that sense, they're enabling that attitude. I said I wanted to talk about the addictive thing. When you start cheating, right, which we can agree that it's unethical, right? It violates the rules of engagement, right? So there's a lie that we tell ourselves that we'll know when to stop. We'll know when to stop doing these shady activities, not just cheating, but everything else. We'll know when to stop. And that's not true. We don't know when to stop. We always, especially if you're the type of person that gets a rush from getting away with things, it's that rush is addictive. And the more risks you take and the more you keep getting away with it, the farther you'll go until eventually you get caught. The reason why we enforce a code of conduct here at UCR is not to be bothersome on the students. It is to catch you while the consequences are not dire. Right? Here you get a bad grade, that's it. But you could lose your job, you could lose your freedom, you could lose a lot of other stuff if you don't know how to stop. So part of our job, and I'm also part of the academic integrity committee. Which one is the one that reviews student cases? Part of my job is to make sure I catch you before it's too late. Okay, so there's a danger on that one. That's why I wanted to leave that one for after. But again, we do it because we do a risk reward analysis, and the reward is even for the one where you want the rush, right? The reward is such the rush is such a reward that you're willing to take the risk. Sadly, and there's a joker, a non-copyright
You make that yourself?
reference. No, I found it. Sadly, with online learning, we have taken the checkpoints where we can catch it. That's one of the bad things. And that has been taken by many students as an opportunity to just cheat, because again, the consequences are even less dire. So the reward is the risk is meaningless, right? I can do it. Okay, yeah, my professor is using respondent lockdown browser, but I have another device. I can see stuff there. It's easy. We know the workarounds. I was a student not long ago. We know the workarounds. We know that everyone who is motivated to cheat, they're gonna cheat. And I don't like using responders. Raise your hand if you love responders. Raise your hand if you don't know what responders is, because I heard some. Okay, you innocent, you innocent souls. So responders lockdown browser is this proctoring software that pretty much blocks your computer until you finish the exam. It's a horrible software. It's a horrible software. And if anyone wants to develop a better one, you have my vote. But it's a horrible software. We don't like to use it, but we need to create those roadblocks. And we're doing it for you. Okay, we're not doing it to punish you. And anyone who has taken a class with me and has taken an exam with responders, especially this guy, I had to be so accommodating for this guy. My computer doesn't work, right? So I have to bring a special exam. I try to be as accommodating as I can, because I don't want for it to be punitive, right? We don't want to punish students for those. In sake of the minority, I hope minority, that might be motivated to cheat. But we have to do it. We have to do it because we have to catch those students. But yes, again, online learning sadly has removed a lot of those roadblocks. And there's a lot of people who generally wouldn't cheat, but now because the roadblocks have been removed, they're doing it. And now that we're going back in person, there's a lot of students that are just getting stuck because they never learned these fundamentals. I never learned, I know the fundamentals of the round robin algorithm now. Yes, so everybody knows. I know how to solve the philosopher's problem now because I encountered it again in my master's degree, and that time I tackled it myself. But there was this big knowledge gap there, and that was one of the consequences. And in fact, that leads us to the next slide. So yeah, consequences of cheating. The consequences: short term, you're stressed. I'm gonna get caught. If you have to create materials for cheating, I mean that's extra time. I was too lazy for that. I never did that. Yes, create materials to have as a reference. I'm too lazy for that kind of stuff. I'm not as motivated to cheat. So there are consequences, and you can get stuck. Midterm consequences. I didn't include long term because long term are pretty much they're pretty much fatal. Not that you're gonna die, but fatal, professionally fatal. But midterm, you're gonna have knowledge gaps. That's true. I can tell you from experience, you're going to have knowledge gaps. You just won't know when to stop, and you will have unemployment, whether you're fired because someone caught you being unethical, being immoral in your job, or you're just not going to find a job because you're never going to go past the interview, because of those knowledge gaps you have. Knowing these consequences, I think we can incentivize not cheating. And this is what I want to ask right now. How do you think we can incentivize that? And I sent you an article on, can we make computer scientists think or be ethical? So if you want to report anything you read, go ahead. But my question is, how can we motivate and incentivize ethical behavior?
I think from that article, the biggest thing that I took away from it was the fact that they're actually doing like specific lectures and specific classes just surrounding those ethics, and I think it's definitely towards the right direction. Like making them, probably even making them required, because I know if it turns to a breath class or something that's like a tech elective, it's probably just gonna go like swept under the rug. But if it's a little degree requirement, then I definitely think people would start thinking more ethically in the rest of their.
So shine a light on it, basically,
For sure.
and have a way for everybody to learn about ethics. Any other ideas about how we can motivate or incentivize ethical behavior or not cheating? If you have an idea that has me not using responders, please, yes.
I think going off what Vince said, maybe like in what we're talking about here, maybe having like students understand like short-term and mid-term or even long-term consequences, and because sometimes we, especially when you're cheating, you don't understand the long-term consequences. You're just doing it because of the rush or because you're stuck at that moment.
But here's the thing. You probably believe me right now because I'm making such a compelling argument. but think back. Let's go back to when we were high school students. Would you believe me if I told you that there were consequences to cheating, like long and midterm consequences? Everyone would believe me. If I came, hey, don't cheat because something bad's gonna happen. Yeah.
I would probably listen to it, but I would probably go ahead and cheat it regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at that point, I feel like a lot of us, or me personally, like felt like, oh, this doesn't matter. Like high school, middle school, all that stuff is just like, yeah, it's just to get a grade at that point.
All right.
So maybe even like probably even right now, like internalizing the fact that it does have long-term effects is I think if you really internalize that, I'll turn away from cheating entirely, like 100%. But it's hard to get to that point where you internalize it and start really thinking about what it does in the future.
All right. And why are we talking? I'll go with you in a little bit. Why are we talking about cheating when the topic is ethics in tech? This is why. Because cheating is when you actively deciding not to cheat is one of the first steps that you can take to be ethical with low risk consequences. When being ethical, and in this case, if not cheating means that you're gonna get a bad grade, that's not a big consequence. When you're out there and your ethical decision is calling out on abuses that are happening in your company, but if you do it, it means that you're going to lose your job. If you're used to being unethical when there's low risk, you're not going to start being ethical when there's high risk. It's not going to happen. You have to start when the risk is low. Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think a lot of it is like academic pressure too, right? Because like most of the reasons to cheat on anything, you're mostly going to be cheating on like a test, right? A test or some sort of assignment that has a lot of weight, right? So that you kind of get that A grade, get that 4.0 or something like that, right? So I think what students think of during that time is like, oh, I don't care how I complete this assignment. I just have to complete it for that A or for that 4.0. So I think kind of reduce that like mindset of like, I just need to complete this somehow, right?
Yeah.
And focus more on like, it doesn't matter if I complete this, all the way. Maybe I complete like 50%, but at least I know what I did for that 50%.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if there's any activity in the chat, but if there is, please do let me know. But for reasons, I don't give A pluses. I don't give them at all. Because first of all, coming from Mexico, over there we have a 100-point system. If you get 95, you get 95. If you get 96, you get 96. There's no letter system. But translating the number system to the letter system, an A means you mastered everything. Is 100%, right? So A pluses just make no sense to me. And it doesn't affect your GPA. But here's the thing, and this is not a criticism towards A pluses. There are very good arguments to giving A pluses. I understand the motivation argument. It's there, and so this is my opinion. I'm not saying it is superior to not give A pluses. That's not what I'm saying. But I do know that when you have a high achieving bar, such as the case of an A plus, if I promise A plus to anyone who doesn't make any mistake in the class, and you're determined to get that A plus, that might be a motivator for cheating. Right? I don't want you to be the best that ever was. I want you to be good enough. Right? So it has consequences. It could have consequences. It doesn't have. I don't have the data to back it up. One day probably I will. But it could be a motivator for cheating, and this is where we also transition into mental health. It could be also a motivator to push yourself beyond what's healthy. There's students who thrive doing extra. There's just people like that. They thrive doing extra, right? And it's fine. But there's people who will push themselves to do extra and be miserable doing it. So that's something else that we need to bring into this is the topic of mental health, and we can have a separate session on that. But what the role of mental health and how it balances out with ethics. And this is when we have to talk about, for example, crunching in the video game industry, right? Being in such a stressful situation where your mental health is at risk could push you to cheat, and could push you to copy someone else or to be unethical, which I do believe that bosses who enforce crunching are being unethical on it. In all honesty, they're cheating on their employees. So again, if again, not comparing A plus to crunching, totally different things. But again, if it's a grain of rice in the all scheme of things, like if there's any negative impact for you, I don't want to give A pluses. So that's one of the little things that you can start analyzing about your life, like what type of actions am I doing that are threatening my integrity, that I should be changing right now, because they're going, again, the topic of tech ethics in the tech industry is closely related to what you do as a college student. They're tied with each other. So that's why we're starting from cheating. If we can transition to the next slide. I don't know how we're doing with time.
We're out of time.
Okay, next slide. So we close. I told you to tell me. Okay, so these are tough questions for CS. And there's one that I forgot to add there, but I'll mention it myself. Okay, so tough questions for CS. Who owns your work? Who owns your work? You work on top. You're standing on shoulders of giants. Your programs work because there's a framework that someone else created, and most likely because there's some code in Stack Overflow that you copied. So who owns that code? That's a tough question that we have right now in CS, right? Another tough question is, who owns the data? The one who generated it or the one who captured it? That's a big discussion that we could also spend an hour on it. Who owns the data? Those are ethical questions that we need to start asking ourselves. What is the societal impact of our work? how is that program that you're going to create, how can it be used to abuse other people, to abuse on the rights of other people, right? We could talk about many programs who were originally created without the intention for being used for we'll call it evil, but in the end they were used with evil intent. All right, so you need to ask yourself that, you need to be part of that conversation. Another thing is, what about the environment? What about the environment? Like, for example, right now there's a talk about how crypto is hurting the environment, or NFTs are hurting the environment. And that is something that we're just starting to talk about right now, because again, computer science didn't have the power that it has right now, and it has the power to build, but it also has the power to destroy. And the environment has to be part of your ethical decisions, because in the end, what you do to the environment, it impacts everyone. So it should be defined by the societal context. The question that I didn't add there, what about the diversity and inclusion? What is the role of diversity and inclusion in ethics? I can tell you my answer. If your ethical code is shaped by people of a particular group, is not going to be an effective ethical code for including others. So diversity and inclusion have also to be central in ethics, because they are the one, because having a diverse group, a group that is both diverse and inclusive, that is, it has both representation, and that representation is given equal value, is what helps create a better ethical code and shape ethics in a better way. And why are we talking about this right just now? Well, it's not really, well, it's influential because because the society is talking about this, about the impact of the environment, about diversity and inclusion. So there's a little bit of that. But in reality, it's again because we are in unprecedented times in computer science. We're in times where we need everybody to participate. We need people from different backgrounds to participate. And sometimes your role, the ethical choice that you can do is to be that representation, right? Like, for example, I am here as a faculty member who is Mexican, and I am the only Mexican professor here at UCI, right? And I know my role in representing Latinos, my Latino students and Latino professors. So sometimes you have to identify that. Who am I representing here? Because the work you do will impact others with a similar background that you have. So if you make sure that the ethical code that you shape is good for those who you represent, that means that the group that is creating that ethical code can be more inclusive. Okay, so sometimes there is just that. And finally, next slide. Where can you find me? That's my office right there. Anytime when I'm there. If I'm not there, I can go. But that's my email, and that's my teaching schedule for next year. So if you want to take any of my classes, or you're welcome to do so. But regardless, you are still students at UCR. I am still a professor at UCR. So we're all Highlanders. So regardless, if you're a student in the class, outside, you're still my student, and I'm still here to help you out. Hopefully this was useful, a little bit of fun, and you enjoyed it. Now I know.
From us guys, some quick announcements before you guys dip. I just want to say the ACM club room is open, and yes, we've been working for like we haven't had the club room for like 2 years, so this is like a pretty big deal, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be the first CS club on campus to have their club room open. So please scan that QR code so you can get in at any time. Probably most of us are going to be there, but if you scan that QR code, you're going to be able to scan in if it's always closed for some reason. And yeah, it's great. There's whiteboards everywhere. There is a fridge and microwave, there's snacks there at all times. So yeah, please come out. And there's also a number of workshops if you want to come and lead a workshop. You have your own little special thing that you want to tell everybody about. We'll give you a platform so you can talk about it. And these slides are going to be on the Discord, so and the Slack. So follow us on Discord and Slack if you haven't already. Anybody want to look at that? Anybody want to scan that? Cool. And we have some upcoming events, some cool opportunities. We have a web development project series that's going to be hosted in the club room by Vivian right here. It's going to be tomorrow from 4 to 6. Yeah, 4 to 6. So you come over there, win some web dev. We're using React to make our website from scratch. So that's gonna be pretty fun. And there's also TICS happening. I don't know how many from TICS is here, but the technical interview and coding help. Pretty much this is like your lead code club. They have a general meeting tomorrow. And there's also a fundraiser by CCC that's happening tomorrow. All this stuff is going to be on the Slack and the Discord, probably some announcements. So look at the announcements. There's also, if you want to learn about computer vision, you should probably join the IEEE Discord, and you'll get to learn about Python and computer vision. And yeah, we have a second general meeting that's 2 weeks from now that we're going to talk about research and yeah, just research. Q&A. Not a lot of people know how to get into research, so we'll probably get you along that path into getting research. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you for coming out, guys. Appreciate it.
So it's like just over.